Okay, I think the quorum is complete. A very good afternoon to all of you. And on behalf of Dynamic CXO and NTT Netmagic, I would like to welcome all of you for today's webinar session on staying safe, rethinking security to mitigate risks arising from new work models. Our topic is a little longer, but in a nutshell, what we are going to talk about is what new security challenges are the organizations facing in the new normal. I mean, the situation that actually has hit us post the COVID-19 pandemic. So before I introduce my esteemed panelists who are going to have a conversation with me today, I would like to set the context, set the ball rolling, and give you some context of what the situation is, how the organizations are preparing, what are the different scenarios that we need to be discussing about and talking in terms of information security and our security business. So, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic on March 11th. This year, and organizations around the globe were literally forced to accelerate their procedures to enable remote work for the jobs that have traditionally been viewed as office jobs. They were never considered as jobs to be done remotely. Most organizations responded very quickly, very swiftly, and were able to implement traditional workplace security measures to support a remote work environment. At least the basics were quickly put in place. But I guess those basics were not quite enough. Just to substantiate some facts, SANS Institute conducted a remote worker poll in the month of May this year, which showed that many companies were quite prepared for the remote work that most would think. It was quite impressive to see that most organizations were able to turn on the dime and enable their workforce to support their current roles from a remote place when these roles typically occur in an office environment. Now, before COVID-19 pandemic was declared, most of the workforce was not working from home. Almost 68% of the respondents to this SANS poll reporting that less than 30% of their workforce work from home using computers to access official resources. Of these 30%, the majority, around 50%, reported that this was only 10% of their workforce. The pandemic created a dramatic shift, however, with 82% of respondents now reporting that 80% of their, or even greater of their workforce was working from home. Poll results also showed that the companies that were able to adapt most quickly were those who were prepared by providing employees with take-home laptops and the equipment for securely accessing data remotely. It may be through a VPN tunneling or any other similar method to access, for example, multi-factor authentication. Almost at the same time, Verizon also released its 2020 data breach investigation report, which is now most talked about in the recent times. And some startling facts actually came out of that report. 67% of organizations said there were these three types of attacks that accounted for most breaches, which the three are, the number one is credential theft, the second one is human errors, and the third one is social engineering. 27% of the respondents for that report, they mentioned ransomware, a critical and a big challenging problem for them and was rising. The ransomware threat continues to get bigger. Another 43%, the 43% of the breaches involved web application attacks, twice as much as last year. And as many as 58% said personal data was the prime target of the suspects of the threat actors, which is again almost double from last year. Another, if we drift away from these two reports that I've just mentioned and talk about another big factor in enterprise security, um, the challenges that the CISOs and the CIOs see in their organization was the dependency on cloud computing infrastructure. Most organizations continue to adopt cloud computing and move most of their workloads on the cloud to benefit from the promise that it gives, which is whether it is in efficiency or it is scalability or it is about agility, improved agility. Cloud certainly gives a benefit. So while the cloud service providers, be it Amazon, be it Azure, be it Google, they continue to expand security services to protect their evolving cloud platforms. It is ultimately the enterprise's responsibility to secure their data within these cloud environments. Worth mentioning here is the Cybersecurity Insider's 2019 Cloud Security Report that highlights what is and what is not working for security operations team in securing their cloud data, cloud systems, and cloud services. So 93% organizations in that report are moderately to extremely concerned about cloud security. The top cloud security concern of cybersecurity professionals is data loss and leakage. Unauthorized access through misuse of employee credentials and improper access controls takes the #1 spot in this year's survey as the single biggest perceived vulnerability to cloud security. The top two operational security headaches the SOC teams are struggling with are compliance and lack of visibility in the cloud security. So all in all, at the first glance, the basics of cybersecurity are improving and cyber resilience is on the rise. I can say that with certain degree of conviction. Pick up any latest research or report, it will show that most organizations are getting better at preventing the direct cyber attacks. But in the shape-shifting world of cybersecurity, attackers have already moved on to the indirect targets. That's most important to understand, such as vendors and other third parties in the supply chain. It is a situation that creates new battlegrounds even before they have mastered the fight in their own backyard. So there are many problems that a CISO and a CIO has to confront with in these changing times. Quick mention of what World Economic Forum says, that this paradigm shift is putting immense pressure on cybersecurity operations. The Security Operations Center have been designed to look for anomalous behaviors. The SOCs are operating with impaired visibility because everything looks anomalous. Everything looks anomalous. The critical business assets and functions are significantly more exposed to opportunistic and targeted cyber attacks by criminal organizations and nation states seeking to exploit vulnerabilities and plant seed for future attacks. So many such things, come out. So we will discuss some of these things, but before we begin the discussion, I would like to mention that we will run a live poll during this web event. The poll will have 3 questions, and I'm happy to announce that 6 lucky delegates who fill up this survey will stand a chance for a free security assessment by CloudSec. So can I request my team to flash the first poll question before I bring my panelists into play? Here you go. So a quick poll question is, do you believe that the new normal is not just a hype, but a permanent new way of working that introduces hitherto unforeseen risks? This poll will remain on your screen for, I guess, 15 seconds. Kindly fill up the poll as quick as you can. Okay, I think, yeah, great. So the poll disappears. We will have the results of the poll soon as possible. Here you go. The results are overwhelming. 80% of the people say yes. You know, that they do believe that the new normal is not just a hype, but a permanent new way of working that introduces hitherto unforeseen risks. So thank you very much for my team. With that, I would like to now introduce my panelists for today's discussion. Uh, it's my pleasure to have Amitabh Srivastav, General Manager, Information Systems, Sony India Private Limited. I also have Preeti Kanwar. Preeti heads IT and business applications and is also the CISO of NEC Technologies India Private Limited. Let me also welcome Madhusudan Kohli. Madhusudan is the head of user experience and group IT management at Times Group, Bennett Coleman and Company. I also have with me Navneethan M. Navneethan is the CISO of a leading fintech BFSI sector company. Also, we have with us Rishikesh Kamath. Rishikesh is the Vice President, Products and Services, NTT Netmagic. He heads the managed security and services at the organization and is also responsible for evangelizing the development and go-to-market of global managed services, managed security services, and the CDN portfolio. So welcome to all the panelists. And with that, I would like to open, for the discussion. My first question actually goes to Amitabh. So Amitabh, welcome. In times such as today, you heard my long introduction. In times such as today, when the workforce is dispersed and the devices are not under a defined perimeter, what kind of unique challenges did you face with regards to data security? What are those unique challenges that come to your mind that the organization and the workers, the security professionals were confronted with regards to data security?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Hello. So when this thing all started, we had a different set of challenge. Definitely, this was very sudden. Not all the employees were equipped for remote working at our end because we didn't envisage that. Though we had done a grassroots level of work that we would make few people, like all the critical people, should be working remotely to manage the business continuity, and all of the planning was in place. But when it happened, it was a big, not only India was affected, all the global, it was kind of a global issue. And at Sony, at our end, we have resources which are shared across the region, Asia Pacific at least, for our India operations. And definitely the biggest challenge which came suddenly was how do we augment the backend infrastructure in this kind of situation. So definitely we have to find out ways to connect the employees which we were not able to connect earlier. And certain things came up which were part of the business continuity plan. Within one site fails, another site takes it up. Now, but when the all the locations were down, that whole business continuity plan was not able to work. So we have to find out solutions to connect employees which were on their own machines. So this was one of the challenge which were there. And definitely these machines were not part of corporate network. They didn't had the mechanism to deploy the updates, antivirus packages, all the DLP, etc., etc. So definitely this was one of the biggest challenge for us, that during a time when we are not able to deliver the machines to them, though we had, thankfully we had the machines, but we didn't have the mechanism to get them delivered to these employees. So we had to find out a ways and means to get the machines activated for their own, which were their own machines. We will find out critical employees which had their own machines. We were able to bring them up. We have to manually log on to their machines, get their Windows updated, antivirus patches updated, and then work out a mechanism how do we connect them over a limited bandwidth over to our network securely because definitely we were planning to use VPN, but we were not able to use VPN in those machines over there. It was not working. So that was one of the biggest challenge for us. And the other challenge which is coming up is now with everything moving on to the living room of the employees, the Wi-Fi which is there for the employees, whether these are secured or not, at the level of each and every employee where they're working. And the confidential data now getting access from the third-party location, which is like out of our network area. How do we secure this? So these are the certain challenges which we face imminently. Connecting the employees which were not there already, getting the bandwidth working for delivering the security updates to them. How do we do that? And how do we make sure that we are able to restrict the access of the employees, further restrict when they were working within the physical domain of the office? How do we further restrict the access of those employees to the data which is only to be used by them for operations?
Great. Thank you, Amitabh. But just before I move on to the other panelists, you have to fix your either microphone, because we were not able to hear you properly. There were some cracks in the voice. So I will quickly move on to
Okay,
Preeti, my question remains the same. However, I might put it in a slightly different way. So what Amitabh said, was it more or less true in your case as well? Or you faced some unique challenges when this lockdown was imposed and the workforce was literally forced to work from remote locations where all the wherewithals were not in place.
Hello, everyone. So Rahul, as Amitabh said, I think all of us in the industry are facing more or less similar kind of challenges. Initially, yes, suddenly everyone was forced to work from home, and we had the policy of mixture of laptop and desktops. So when everyone had to work from home, it was a big dilemma for us how to enable the complete workforce. So we had to deliver the desktops as well, where in my lifetime, I'd never thought of delivering the desktops at home. Laptop is still okay, but it was a big challenge for me to change my mindset that the desktop is leaving our premises and going to someone's house. And then over a period of time, we got the information that even desktops are not good enough. They need UPS as well. Then we got the information. So it's a very progressive journey, what I think I've gone through. And every use case was a very challenging use case, not only from security perspective, but also from the operations enablement perspective. Then I never thought that people are facing challenges, even if they have the inverters and everything. Their Wi-Fi router is going off when electricity is going off. And there are certain Wi-Fi routers which take more than 5 minutes to come up. So when you are in calls and you need uninterrupted calls, you need the UPS, special kind of UPS along with your Wi-Fi router as well. So these were the challenges. And then when we talk about the security perspective, yes, we were very well equipped. Being the Japanese organization, we are very, very particular of the security aspects. So we were equipped with VPN, we were equipped with the endpoint security, but all those things were very good when we were working inside the premises. Now, my complete workforce is not in my network, right? They are operating from all over the world, all over the places. The internet browsing, what they are doing is their internet. The way they are coming to the network is for VPN. Within very short span of time, we had to enable the dual factor authentication. We did not have the MAC binding initially. So we had to enable the MAC binding for VPN. We had to re-architect our complete incoming and outgoing traffic, that how traffic will come to our data center, and from our data center, it will go to Japan, US, and worldwide. So it was a big challenge for us to design the architecture. and secure all these loopholes. Then very immediately, within a very short span of time, although within office we are using the Zscaler and the complete traffic is going through Zscaler, but when people are working from home, my Zscaler is not coming into the picture. So I very quickly had to move to the Z app plugin of the Zscaler, where we can restrict the browsing of users. Then we got the requirement that we need to monitor the productivity as well. So we had to install the productivity tools to make sure that every day we can give the login, logout, and other kind of details to everyone. So it was a good challenging journey. We had to upgrade our bandwidths because the way bandwidth was getting utilized when people were at office and the way it is getting utilized when they are using the VPN. So there are a lot of differences which is happening. So this is how the journey has been. And I think it's a similar journey for everyone, each one of us.
So I congratulate you to hold your smile, but may I ask you a question? Did you lose your sleep in this whole period of 3 months?
So Rahul, just before this, I was having my call with CEO and HR, and I was telling them that our working hours are 7 days a week and at least 20 hours a day. So when you are thinking about moving to 4 days a week, I would be very great if I can move me and my team working 5 days a week. Currently, we are working 7 days a week, and I'm not sure last time when did we get the sleep, because it's all the time mails keep coming. People, they have divided their shifts to work. Some people, they are working in morning shift, some are working in afternoon shift, some are working in evening shift. So all these is happening, and along with these security challenges, I think the biggest challenge what we are facing at our organization is, and where we are very particular about this thing, there is a different kind of human handholding, employees handholding what needs to be done. When we used to work at office and when we are working remotely, I think our senior level managers and everyone is not well equipped to have that kind of interaction. So not only security, this is also a very important aspect to know what is going on in employees' mind. Otherwise, you cannot predict the behavior. If someone is getting into depression, he can behave in whatever way. So no security tool is going to secure you. I believe that human aspects, whatever security tools you put, human aspects are very important to manage. So these things, how to make sure that people are not depressed, how to make sure people are not overworked. So this is another kind of challenge what we are facing and trying to adhere to.
No, I
Because
agree.
you are right, we are getting sleepless nights.
Yeah, I see Rishi taking notes even on these human aspects. Rishi, be prepared. I'll ask you some questions outside the syllabus as well. Let me move on to Madhusudan now and bring you into the discussion, Madhu. I still see the same background. This is not artificial. You are working from home, so I have multiple times had a discussion with you that whether the existing security posture was enough to ensure the security of the data assets, or your existing security posture, which may have broader visibility of what happens within the organization, had that fallen redundant. What changes did you make in that posture to actually affect rethinking and redefining the security in the new normal?
Sure, Rahul. Thank you for having me and for the question. But two things. One is, I think it's a bit unfair, Rahul, on you that you're giving such a great reward to the audience and not to the panelists of getting the security assessment done. But I'm sure those attending the webinar would love this reward.
Okay, hang on for a moment. Rishi, are you extending that to the panelists as well?
Yeah, we are all sure we can look into that. Definitely.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. You have the word from the horse's mouth. Go on.
And second, I just want to second what initially Preeti was saying on that. In fact, I was talking to my boss on Friday and I said, can I apply for a leave on Saturday and Sunday at least? So it's the same thing for me. Like I shared last time, my paper goes to print for around 2 a.m. and then my e-paper starts at 6 a.m. And indeed, I think for IT professionals and primarily those who are responsible both for infra and security, it's been a sleepless nights. But Rahul, coming on to your questions on that, first is I think it's been since number of years we are talking about actually the workplaces are going undergoing through a complete paradigm shift. Work ethics are changing rapidly, and the way we are working today is completely different the way we used to work a couple of years back. Modern workplaces, we actually no longer call these as offices, we call these as modern workplaces, which are no longer confined to the rigid office walls or cubicles. Now we have satellite offices coming into picture, virtual teams coming into picture. So while digitally growing, provides you a wonderful connected experience and agility, but it is also creating new challenges for the business in terms of growing threat levels and privacy. We need to maintain that level of confidentiality, integrity, and most importantly, availability of data and user experience every minute and every time. On top of that, information security nevertheless remains a steady factor that's being transformed to plug the vulnerabilities owing to work from home or work from remote. And as the enterprises, like I talk about, stretch beyond the firewalls, the new challenges are emerging out. And of course, the new one, which now is the geopolitical, right? So while our brave army soldiers are trying to protect the borders, the IT guys are talking about borderless security on that. And that's what, I also had to work on that. So a lot of things, Rahul, I had to drive in that because it's a 182-year-old legacy organization that primarily we had. And like Preeti shared, for us, the ratio was almost about a 60-40. 60 is the laptops and 40 is us. Now, when we talk about those desktop users, they were primarily the editorials, designers. They actually need a station machine, powerful machines, powerful connectivity, because they are the one who are designing the paper. And then overnight, when we have to, one is work on their BCP enablement. And of course, like some of the other fellow colleagues and panelists, I didn't have the option, but I let them take their desktops home. Meanwhile, I worked with some of the telcos and tried to arrange certain internet dongles for them because they didn't have those things. But I think some of the key things that I still had to address, one was the business continuity, in all forms and shapes. So, and for us, because the on-time paper release is very important, even though it was locked down, but we were part of the essentials and, and everyone still expects the paper to reach their doorsteps by 5:30, 6 a.m. So for me, the timelines were very critical on that. Then the most important aspect came into the securing our IT landscape. So there, thankfully, the firewalls that we had, they were next generation. So we enabled VPN. We got MFA enabled on that. I think I also believe on that, old wise thought that your strongest link is also your biggest weakness. And while we all talk about people being our biggest assets, they are our biggest weakness as well. And something good to have and something that they need to provide is what was on my mind. And that's why we enabled two-factor authentication as well on that. And then strengthening number of other things on the DNS security and certain compliance and control. The another thing that we have to work on, and which I very swiftly took the decision, like primarily we had antivirus, which was though good on technology, but was more on a file and a signature based. And with so many machines sitting outside the office perimeter, it was important to get them onto a cloud. So there again, we started looking at certain technology where look at the latest solutions so that we can do a patch management or management of our machines over the cloud. So, these are some of the other things that we have done, apart from standard one like multi-logging, hot desking, and all that provided.
Okay, great perspective. Stay with me. I will have a few more questions to probe you on. At this stage, let me welcome Navneetan. Navneetan, you have been waiting for a long time. Please come in. And as I said, the question actually remains the same, and it is about what kind of unique challenges did you face? Did your organization face? Since you are a new age company, you are a better equipped new age organization. What kind of typical challenges that you faced during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rahul. Thank you so much for having me here. Number one, just I can, the inline with the thought Preeti, Madhusudan, and then Amitabh is brought it. Really, most of the CISO and CIO might not had, great slept. The last 3 months, the way the number of tickets, the number of issues, the number of challenges, always they'll be occupied, even though during this office hours. But during this time, it's absolutely, outstanding, commitment from all the CIO and then the CXOs. Here, from the responsibility standpoint, this time seeing, two different dimensions. Before coming, this COVID situations, also we had a lot of security challenges, right? The people used to work from hotel, home, or maybe beach, road, wherever it is, the people used to work. It's not new where we are working. But now the challenge is, that time it was just 20%, right? 20% of workforce, they used to work from home. Second one is, in terms of the 20% of work, or maybe the 100% of work, at least within a week or sometime, they'll be back to office. So at least to the authentications, all the things will get synced, and then in terms of the patches or in terms of any gaps on the systems will get fixed during that time. Now the major challenges and worry is, it's like continuously, it's a 3 months, right? It's more than 3 months we are going ahead, and then it's complete disconnect waiting. And then here, if you see that now the people are talking about in terms of the VPN, as multi-factor authentications. So there also we have a lot of challenges, right? Because now we have to focus on the 2 set of product. One is on the corporate office environment, and then second one is really we have to focus on the employee home environment, right? So what are the effort you are putting now on the corporate environment? Really, we have to put the same level of effort on the protecting the home environment, because couple of organizations still they're not configured and the energies to the complete MFA. It's going with the VPN credentials. So once your credential is compromised on your local routers or switches, Wi-Fi, whatever you have it, through that just securely I can land up in your corporate network. From there I can go and penetrate wherever I wanted as a genuine users. So that's the way those organizations factor is not only on protecting the corporate, absolutely they have to focus on protecting the home network also. It's a major challenges. And then if you see the recent survey, most of the things as Preeti had, the well set on the statement, there's a mental health is very important than the, the other area where the people need to be work from efficiently. At the same time, how do we securely, take it forward? So that's a way the phishing attack is really rapidly gone up because at least in the organizations, if you see this, a couple of phishing simulations where we used to do this, we are sitting next to next, right? If I get a same kind of email, at least I'll tell my colleague and friend, right? I can stood up and saying that just I got so-and-so email, just could you please, don't click on that, or, just walk into the IT folks and then ensure that these are the things it's happening. But now situation is absolutely different. This communication is disconnected, right? If you want to make a call, it's maybe I have to ping on the, the Skype and then, other things. It may not be just the way of, I can raise my hand saying that boss, these are the phishing things it's happening, how do we block and then how do we, ensure that. So that's the way most of the organizations, it's working specifically on the BFS sectors, like not only protecting the organization assets, absolutely we got into the protecting the home network also. Specifically, if you want to talk about this, protecting the Wi-Fi router, just we have given the best in section, how do you protect your Wi-Fi routers in terms of the password, in terms of SSID, in terms of router login default password. That itself a major hack where we have done the demonstration, share the videos, and then where we have done the demonstration in our apartment where the huge number of people living, and then its message is spreading across this all the people positively, like not only the organizations, the home things also needs to be protected to protect the organization assets. So that's the first level of thought I have, Rahul.
Great. I think we've got a great perspective from all 4 of you. I will go back to Amitabh once more. I hope Amitabh, your mic or your connection is fixed. So what I wanted to ask you, and I'm very intrigued to know that everyone, each panelist so far has said that they belong to a very evolved organization. Their standards of security, information security and privacy are very, very high. But those standards and compliances are applicable in an environment where most of the workforce is working in a controlled perimeter, in a controlled environment where you have the checks and balances. In that case, the conventional way of securing is to secure the asset or the device. However, in the changed scenario, where the workforce is extremely distributed, it's important to identify the threats, the kind of threats that are hitting us, and then implement a security strategy that is appropriate to address those threats. Do you agree with me? And if you agree with me, then what kind of checks and balances, or what kind of change in the security posture that you orchestrated, which could cater to the new normal?
I think the voice is better now, most probably.
Slightly better.
Slightly better. Okay. Fine. From the perspective of what you asked, majorly all enterprises like ours, which is governed globally, most of our security policies for remote working were already there. And technically, they form the guiding principles in the current scenario for us, wherein they do have the basic level of structure. How do we work? How do we remotely work? How do our employees access the network? What they need to access? And definitely, but with the new normal, we might have to revisit and check the security level of critical applications, network, and access to the various a bit of cloud that we use. For us, as I mentioned earlier, that the policies and much of the security is governed globally. We have a central organization which governs all the security of Sony enterprises. And for this, it requires a lot of collaboration across the various geographies, across global teams. We are reporting to Asia Pacific, so we have a lot we can share with them. And definitely this helps us in taking on the solutions that have been deployed somewhere at the global level, and these are easily accessible to us. So any of the solutions which are there already there, we would collaborate to get those solutions and tweak them to meet our requirement after discussing and getting them approved as per the security thing. One thing is definitely sure, the company parameters are extended to the living room of the employees. And as Preeti has also mentioned, our reliance on the employee have increased a lot for the data security. So one of the factors we see in the new normal is that we have to educate, re-educate, and keep on educating the employee on the data security aspects that are going to come up. And we have to give them exact pointers which are required by them to be followed in various kind of scenarios. And have to educate them that the level of security doesn't require to be going down. You are not supposed to share anything with this, any employee, and the data, the concept of data is not only within the enterprise parameter, it's now in your living room. How do you handle that, and what you have to do and what you're not to do? Apart from that, now second thing that we are looking forward is definitely we have multi-factor authentication already in place, but how do we use even for the key applications, which are the, we can call this so-called the crown jewels of the company, which have the critical data? How do we make them a multi-factor authentication level? So people just not log on to the network, but they when log on to the network and go to the application also, they start using the so we are working on those kind of scenarios. And how do we work on the BDIs? Definitely because as with all the people, we had around most of our employees working from within the office environment. And we have need at least the desktop people.
Amitabh, I'm really sorry. I have to interrupt you. Amitabh, your voice is absolutely cracking. I'm extremely sorry. I have to interrupt you here because nobody is able to hear. I'm getting a lot of. So I will come back to you. Just hold on with me. I will just come back to you, Preeti. Let me go back to you and ask the same question. Do you think you are also governed by global policies, and therefore everything that was there was in the perfect order, or do you think that you faced some some really new, unique threats? And how did you safeguard yourself? Was the conventional way of securing enough for you, or did you reimagine, rethought the whole security paradigm?
So definitely we had to rethink a lot of things, and being the Japanese organization, definitely we are governed by global policy, although we have our own strict protocols as well. But it is very important for us to adhere to global policies. And at times, I would say that global policies and the pressure from the headquarters really help us in getting a lot of financial approvals. Because once the notification comes from headquarters, then CEO, CFO, everyone has to approve it. They don't have any way. For example, we did not have the MFA on our VPN, and we were struggling with this thing. And I had been discussing with my top management, with my CEO, that this needs to be done, but somehow we were not getting the approvals. But since we got the information, or ultimatum, we can say that, from headquarters, because there certain incidents had happened, we were able to get the required approvals. So a conventional way, definitely, more or less, somewhere or the other, it might not work out. We did not have the Z app installed. We were happy with Zscaler implementation, but with this new work from home environment, we had to implement the Z app as well. Just give me 1 second, please.
Okay, I will quickly move on to, while she may have to attend something important. Madhu, conventional way of handling security versus rethinking security. What's your take on that? I mean, were there different dimensions that were brought in to manage the remote workforce from a security perspective?
Yeah, absolutely, Rahul. I think, like I said, the very, even from an, being the head IT, the call that first I have to take it very basic thing, even on an antivirus, which was more on a, on-prem kind of a solution, which I have to go and move into a cloud technology so that we can go and manage that. But number of other things that primarily we have to look at into the whole of security architecture, and the certain things which I asked my team to immediately look at this thing. One was, traditionally we have always been providing more of a network-based access. And they said, I think it's less of a, like initially you were also talking about, right, more on the application. So it's more of an application threat that today we face rather than just the network. So I asked my team to go and review on the application-based access so that we move on to a least privilege access model. So LPA kind of a thing that we are internally exploring, and based on user profiling and access that we are trying to provide. We are also looking at completely, rather than just the parameter security, because it's more of an edge computing today. So we are talking about, look at the, how do we go and secure more on the, drive more on the edge security on that. Manage security services and other aspects where I've invested heavily on my NOC and SOC as well, so that we have those real-time feeds coming into. And apart from that, we just made sure that even if we do all those things, our end users are still most vulnerable, because while we will talk about all these security aspects, we can't assume the maturity level on these security aspects. So we are trying to drive a lot of education and awareness on that. So like I shared last time as well, I think one thing I really believe in, and which I'm very strongly driving the organization, is on education, awareness, and enforcement. So through these as well, we're trying to this, but these are the high level things that where we're trying to drive more onto it.
So you mentioned about managed security services. May I ask you a supplementary question to which you can answer very quickly? How much is your organization dependent on managed security services and security services provider, and what kind of intelligence do you get from there?
Rahul, this is actually happening. So we started that last year, and now I'm trying to take it to a next level as well. And we, being part of the media organization, are actually being most targeted industry in the country as well. And especially, you have seen how those, even from the CERT, the advisories are coming, and primarily the big targets, of course, were banks and the media industry out there. A lot of, I think it helps in one is a 24/7 monitoring on that. And the thing that now I'm exploring is, though even having a SOC kind of a thing, which primarily I still feel is more of a reactive thing because something has already happened and which they are trying to do into. We're looking at more into a proactive kind of a thing as well with certain players on that. How do I have a real-time access to whatever is going on? And so that we move into remediation immediately on that. Second is also having the this also helps you get access to what's happening in the industry and in particular to your own domain. So that really helps us, at times it keeps us on the toes as well, but provides us early insights, what's happening in the dark web area, and accordingly we take and drive those precautions internally.
I agree with you that a lot of intelligence comes from these expert managed services, managed security services provider, which we can't internally build in, which is a very big handicap at our end. So thank you very much. Before I bring in Rishi into the arena and discuss certain very interesting things with him, this is the time to flash the second question of the poll. If we can please have the second question of the poll. Here we go. So the question is, what is the level of preparedness of your organization to address the challenges in a post-COVID world? You have 15 seconds to answer this. This is, here are your answers on your screen. If you can quickly answer, I will have the results of the poll and I can actually then tell everybody who's here attending with us. What's the level of preparedness of your organization to address the challenges in the post-COVID world? Great. So the poll disappeared. The answers are on the screen. So most 41% say we will need to augment existing capabilities to cover the future risks, which means there is a potential of re-strategizing, rethinking your security. 31% say we can extend existing solutions to cover future risks. And 25% say we already have solutions that cover future risks. That means these organizations are futuristic, they are very progressive, they have thought of their digital journeys well in advance, and therefore they already have the solutions in place. About 3% say that there won't be any new risks that we will need to address. So just a very minuscule percentage. Welcome, Rishi. You have been waiting for quite some time. I thank you for your patience. You heard 4 panelists that I asked multiple questions, and you were very carefully taking notes. So in the beginning, I would like to ask you your quick, very macro level viewpoint on how do you assess this whole scenario? What changes did you see? What changes did you witness as a service provider? What changes did you see as a cybersecurity expert that you hadn't seen in the pre-COVID era? And then I will ask you a question which is within the syllabus.
So thanks, Rahul. Quick sound check. Is my voice audible?
You are absolutely audible. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, a very warm welcome to all the panelists and to the participants. Thank you so much for taking a time out to join this discussion. It's been really great hearing all the panelists, and they've come from very different industry sectors. So, and I was just taking notes, and I, if I have your permission, Rahul, I'll probably just quickly bring out those key points that I saw, that I noted down, and in no particular order as such, or in no particular, my notes are all over the place actually. But there are points made around data sharing, right? How data will be shared, especially in the case of the Times Group, because there are a lot of articles and content that would need to be shared. Availability in terms of printing press, the paper needs to be released at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, right? Even the e-paper. Then the point that was made on the the psychological aspects of the human or of the employees, in terms of authentication, in terms of the threat intelligence on the dark web or deep web, right? In terms of the least privileged access model. Then in terms of, I think Navneetan made one very interesting point, which I completely agree with, was in terms of the fact that work from home is not new, but it's just that the scale of work from home today is absolutely something that we had not seen in the past, right? And basically those were the points that I've just noted down. I might have missed some other points, right? But then let me just quickly try and explain what my view is of the new normal, right? We've been talking about the new normal and things like that, and I think that will give an idea of what we are seeing as a service provider in terms of what customers are asking of us, right? So first and foremost, I think it's pretty much a given now that you have to assume that you are hacked and you've already been breached, and if not, then you will be. It's not a question of how much protections you put into place to try and prevent against that, right? So that's one thing that's definitely a game changer. Honestly, this is not something that was not known earlier, and it's not something that the COVID pandemic has triggered as such. But definitely, it has, as with everything else, it has kind of escalated the need to have that thought process in mind while going in for thinking about strategy, security strategy, or rethinking the security strategy. Second, increased use of shadow IT environment, right? You have people working from home, they need to collaborate. It's very easy for them to get onto cloud-based platforms, share content, share company data, confidential data, and the CXOs, CIOs, CISOs will have very, very less visibility into what's really happening, right? And for no fault of theirs, simply because somebody wants to use a cloud-based service, an organization could be subject to a data breach, right? So that's something that we could see increased going ahead because of the way people are working from home, right? Then, as I mentioned earlier, a disproportionately high number of people working from home and not going back to work, after a week. So working from home for an extended period of time, right? So the frequency increases. Then increased need to use cloud-based solutions, right? So this is where many of our customers face this challenge where they were actually having an on-premise solution, and because of the pandemic, because of the lockdowns, they were not able to go to the offices or send people out there to do any maintenance work or any other thing, right? So that has also triggered the increase in adoption of the infrastructure as a service cloud solutions. Again, in all of these points, to be very honest with you, very candid with everyone, it's not something new. It's not something that the COVID pandemic has triggered, but the COVID pandemic has definitely escalated this to a very high level. And it has ensured that once people get a hang of this, once you have a lot of applications in the cloud, once you have a lot of people working from home for an extended period of time, that remains, or that becomes a new normal, right? Because psychologically also we tend to kind of start believing that that is now the new thing, right? Probably 15 years down the line, when we look back, the whole aspect of going to work every day and logging in from there might seem extremely redundant. Just like what we see today with all of the mooch courses, right? All of the online courses. I mean, pretty soon probably university training or physical training is on its way out, but again, that's a separate part of discussion. So that, as per me, really is the new normal, so to speak, right? And because of this new normal, there are a number of cyber security risks that are coming up, that have come up. Most of the panelists, all of the panelists mentioned most of these risks, whether it was relating to phishing attacks, whether it is related to data leakage, whether it is related to the ransomware threats. So all of these things, whether it was related to the Wi-Fi, being weak and that being compromised, right? So I think what we are seeing from customers is an increased awareness around these issues, and an increased need to now start thinking about whatever security controls that they have, are they enough? Are they deployed in the right manner? And if the answer is no, then what needs to be done to really make it more efficient? And I heard from each of them, from each of the panelists today, I heard a story of pain, the pain that they went through when they wanted to move people to work from home, right? So it's this experience of pain that will make, or that is making customers think in terms of what they need to change in their security strategy.
Okay, so beautifully explained. How things were progressing, as you said, things were progressing even before COVID, but the COVID situation has escalated it to a very high level. And you also spoke about the new risks to which we have to fight, and how the organizations need to be prepared for that. So if I may ask you another question, that what's your so you explained how rethinking their security strategy is important, but what in your terminology is the right way of addressing these security concerns in a very systematic way? How much do you see automation, for example, playing a role in detecting and responding to these threats?
Yeah, sure. So actually, there are multiple angles to rethinking security. Automation is definitely one angle to it. I will come to it in a minute. I mean, thanks for bringing that out. And there are a few points before I wanted to make before that in terms of how to rethink about security, right? So first is, like I said, the paradigm that security will prevent threats is gone, and now you have this paradigm where you have to invest more in proactive monitoring and detection of these incidents, right? Secondly, traditionally, all organizations have invested in monitoring everything within their network. Okay, but a lot of activity is happening outside the network. Madhusudan mentioned about the dark web and deep web monitoring. Those are areas where one should be monitoring data leaks. Those are areas where one should be monitoring threat actor activity specific to an organization, right? Then implementing protection closer to the user, which basically takes us to more cloud-based solutions, so that you try to clean the threat, or you try to thwart or mitigate the threat even before it reaches to your destination, or even before it reaches to your actual crown jewel. Right? You try to close that beforehand. Right. Additionally, things around audits. Most organizations today have a BAPT cycle, but they don't go in for a continuous assessment, right? So continuous assessment is something that will be required in the new strategy. Coming to the point of automation, definitely automation is one of the things that will be very, very important in the new way of working, or new way of doing things, right? Let me break that up into three parts. What exactly do we mean by automation? See, number one, when you talk about a SOC, and when you have SOC analysts looking at alerts, today most SOCs are overburdened with the kind of alerts that they get, right? One of the first things that SOC analyst needs to do when she gets a alert is to basically fetch more information. Okay. And a lot of time can going into fetching this relevant information, because you will need to look at threat intel sources. You will need to look at other indicators, other IOCs, IOAs. You will need to probably have some files attached to the case management solution or the incident management solution, and so on and so forth, right? So automating that itself takes a big amount of workload away from the SOC analyst, right? The fetching of all the necessary information into a single case window, or into a single case or a target incident ID, which can be quickly looked at by the SOC analyst. Second, in terms of playbooks, right? Automation in terms of codifying the response to certain threats in playbooks. Okay, not each thread that you see, or not each alert that you see always need a separate intervention, or a very unique solution. So playbooks, while today most of the organizations do it documented in an offline manner, having a automation solution that can document those playbooks and codify those playbooks are very important. Again, how is it relevant from a work from home angle? We kind of face this, and we kind of benefited from having an automation solution in place, because many of the work L3 engineers or L2 engineers who were working from home, whenever they had a challenge getting onto the network because of Wi-Fi issues, or other any particular challenges, these playbooks helped us, because these playbooks could even be executed by the tier 1 analysts, right? And that kind of takes a bulk of work out of the tier 2, tier 3 guys, so that they can focus on the more critical aspects of things. Secondly, it brings a lot of quality to the actual incident response, because now you're not dependent on what the skill level of a particular analyst is in terms of what steps to go through, right? So that is important. A third, how this helps us, again, to the point that Navneet mentioned, right, that a lot of the workforce is remote, and which means that patching, for example, is a challenge, right? So how do you patch those unless they come back to the office on a regular basis? So same challenge happens when there is a cyber attack that happens and you need to respond to it, right? Traditionally, one would rely on manually going and changing the controls. For example, if you have a antivirus in place, one may go to the antivirus console and then try to mitigate the threat from there on the affected endpoints, right? Or if there is a DDoS attack, then one may try to initiate switch over of the links to mitigate a DDoS attack on a one particular link, and so on and so forth, right? So automation, the third part of automation is basically this, that it helps in terms of responding to the event much quicker, so that the affected endpoints or the affected infrastructure part or the affected user can be very quickly isolated and quarantined, right? And that helps in the in mitigating the spread of the threat actor itself, whether it is in terms of a malware or any other form. Obviously, again, that helps improve the response times to it, right? So automation in these three aspects, just to quickly summarize, will help in terms of faster detection and in terms of faster response to the threats that get detected.
Okay, I will take a pause, a little bit pause with you. I will come back with the next set of questions with you, but would like to go back to my panelists once again. So Amitabh, I hope your microphone is okay, your bandwidth is okay. So a question to you is that while rethinking the security, it is also important to secure our multi-cloud environments that we are now working with. Most of our workloads are in cloud. So what are your key issues and challenges in implementing a cloud native or cloud specific security control?
Rahul, potentially we are not very big users of cloud as of now, though we have a cloud strategy in place. We are working on that. We are moving everything is on cloud now, OS65. And assessing the cloud securely was already a part of our roadmap pre-COVID also. Am I audible? I think so. Is it okay?
Yes, go on.
Yeah. So that was already part of our roadmap, how to securely assess the cloud from our network, and definitely everything has to be routed through the office network. There is no direct cloud access per se to the employees. So that was already a roadmap. So that has not changed particularly for us. And the other part is all our critical applications are still in-house in our own data centers. Though they have not moved into the cloud currently. So for us, there is not much of a change in this whole cloud part of it. Though now with this coming into picture, and I also see the panelists also discussing on the VDI, which I earlier mentioned, whether I was clear or not, I'm not very sure. VDI on cloud is something which we are also looking forward to make, because the access to the employees is also not only the concern, access to the third party working. My consultants who are third party consultants and providing support, how do they access our network? Because not necessarily every time they have the access to our networks as and when required, because they also spread across the globe. My hardware people, my software people, so how do we provide the access to them? So if we have a scalable VDI on the cloud, which we are evaluating, is how we can mitigate the risk. Our third-party supply vendors who are there, who work on our system sometimes, so third-party supply chain vendors, so give access to them. So this is one of the aspects which we are looking into currently. But yes, we'll be building a roadmap for that. As of now, we are working on it.
Okay, so Madhu, quickly, from identifying and assessing all potential vulnerabilities in the new normal, our security posture has to elevate and go to a proactive and well-defined security architecture that does the identification and remediation in real time. So, how do you think you are geared up for this? Do you have some identified visible gaps that you would like to bridge?
Yeah, Rahul. So I think, like I said, that we in fact security has never been a focus primarily in the media industry, because it was the legacy-driven organization. If I just talk about 4 to 5 years ago, and also we are not driven as strongly by regulatory compliances as like certain BFSI and other, because whatever the data we try to capture, that's actually out on the social network within minutes and hours on that. But however, yes, securing even for those few extra minutes, it really takes that. The first thing that, of course, what we did was, right, which I said, driving the infra level technical changes, which I talk about more around, the application level securities, whatever we were trying to deploy. We also moved on to the cloud first strategy that we had. A lot of legacy data was out there. And that's, in fact, to your earlier question as well, one of my challenges internally has been just moving on that, because we are one of the few organizations, and I don't think so any other media organization who's still on the private network, who has a private cloud as well on that. So for us, it was on that. I think the thing that we are looking more from is now securing more on the infra through the PIMs and others, so that the administrative access are pretty much controlled, because that's again a big gray area on that. Apart from that, I think the NOC we already had, the SOC which we were talking about, we are now moving into more into the security orchestration layer, where rather than a reactive monitoring, we are more doing a proactive monitoring on that. And also trying to primarily sync with my own peers and try to get what's the security maturity level in most of the other organization, which, to be honest, trying to learn and do a copy paste out here on that. The another thing which I've done that is, whether it's a cloud strategy or a security strategy, that I've just made to the, within, when we talk about key stakeholders, we just said that the strategy must exist beyond the, the IT function. It has to be understood and embraced by the business stakeholders as well. And in fact, to be honest, I'll say that I'll glad on that. In last 2 months, I actually had 3 meetings with my audit head, who specifically called what is your readiness on work from home and how you're managing your security. Whereas previously it was, I was running after them, and then we need to strengthen. So there is a mind shift change as well.
Okay, so Navneethan, the same question which I would like to ask you as well. So from identifying and assessing all potential vulnerabilities in the new normal, the security posture has to elevate. So you think the organizations are geared up for this, or are there visible gaps that they need to address?
Yeah, absolutely, Rahul. So in terms of the cloud strategy, most of the organizations who are all really after the cloud, I mean, before the COVID itself, they are well understood, and then things are going on the positive direction. That's one. Second one is, if you see this people who is forced to get into the cloud, they are into the different mode now, right? Because wherever they have IT data centers, it's not scalable, and then it's not moving the things the way we wanted to run the operations for the last 3 months. Definitely, they have started to jump into the cloud. In terms of the cloud adaptations, last 3 months, it's really very high actually, irrespective of the vendor. It's maybe the AWS, Azure, or maybe NTT, whoever it is. It's really gone ahead actually. So that places really, we have seen a lot of gaps in terms of the access control list, and then a lot of gaps in terms of the services, what they are opting. Because most of the organization, they think the cloud security it's absolutely the service provider responsibility. But irrespective of opting with services, whether it is a SaaS or PaaS or maybe infrastructure services, it's absolutely, I strongly believe it's like a shared responsibility of between the vendor as well as the organization who is opting in actually. That part is really the organization has to understand. At the same time, the service provider have to give a lot of clarity, like in terms of security, what are the things comes under your portfolio, what are the things we take care of. Very simple, if you want to take it up. One of the clients just where they have opted as DDoS services. They're not opted as a DDoS services, but in terms of they have thought through like your entire WAN will block this all the DDoS traffic from the end to end. They got on the major hit, and then they told, of course, the services you bought it, but you're not enabled, and then you're not optimized the services what you bought it actually. So that's the way, ultimately the cloud optimization and then cloud adaptations, and then the last 6 months, what was happening is it's very high, but really the holding accountability between these two parties needs to be agreed, as well as need a lot of clarity from end to end to hold the accountability. And the next interesting part is it's on the OPSEC, right? Most of the vulnerability, most of the hacks, the exploits, or the ransomware attacks, it's like close to 90% it's happening through the application security. So it's maybe not only on your cloud environment, right? You have to ensure that your application also secured enough to protect your steps. So that's why the fundamental stuff needs to be taken care on top of the the cloud security area.
Great perspective. Thank you very much for your valuable input, Nathan. So, Rishi, we had the second round with the panelists, and so I'm intrigued to know from you what are the key expectations of the customers from a service provider like NTT Netmagic. Do they expect you to provide tools and services, or do they expect you to use customer provided tools? How do you see this changing, and or do you not see any changes going forward?
Just to give you a perspective, Rahul, there are about 1,800 OEMs in the security space. Okay, so 1,800 is a very large number, and the whole ecosystem is maturing, it's evolving, and a lot of these OEMs obviously will become bigger and better, and others will die out. So what I'm trying to say is that it's really not possible for enterprises, and more so for smaller organizations, to be able to figure out which OEM is giving the right solution for the kind of problem that they are facing. Right? It's not that one OEM is better than the other, but which OEM is giving them the kind of solution that fits their problem better. Okay. So what we have seen is when customers come to us, in almost all of the cases, the expectation is that we should be providing the tools associated with it. We should be recommending, at the very least, the tools that need to go along with the problem that we're trying to solve, whether that problem is that of a remote access, whether that problem is that of a security monitoring, or whether that problem is that of a forensics investigation. So we need to be going to the customers with the right kind of tools, the recommended set of tools. Now, what differs from customers to customers, though, is in terms of how they expect these tools to be implemented. In some cases, customers expect that these tools be implemented on-premise in a captive environment for them, right? So they are more keen on buying them as a CapEx. In the recent past, we've had some mega RFPs come out where the customer has asked for more than 20 plus technologies to be integrated into a single, as part of a single security strategy, right? But of course, I mean, those are a bit of the exception than the norm. But on average, if I look at any security RFP, there are at least 5 to 6 security technologies that the customers are asking of us, right? So CapEx is one way. Then there are other customers, and again, there is no such thing that smaller customers are going for OPEX and bigger customers are going for a CapEx. Right? It really depends what the organization requirement is at that point in time. I mean, we right now have a digital payments platform, large digital payments gateway customer on us, which is completely on OPEX, right? For a SOC operations technology and monitoring. So OPEX is another option. And when I say OPEX, I'm more specifically referring to platform-based services. So these are multi-tenant services which service providers like NTT Netmagic have set up. Either multi-tenant services or cloud-based services, right? That it really depends on that. I mean, so the difference comes from that, right? Whether they want a CapEx on-premise captive solution or a multi-tenant solution, right? Then almost no organization today is starting from scratch. They have certain amount of legacy investment. So the next task that comes is that whatever you are giving us needs to be also integrated with the current environment that we have, whether it is in terms of an ITSM tool, whether it is in terms of integrating the existing security solutions that they have into the detection and response solution that we may provide, and so on and so forth, right? Then I mentioned cloud, and I just want to kind of elaborate a little bit on that. One very key thing we noticed in the last 3-4 months is, unfortunately to our detriment, as a service provider, which is that customers who were with us on cloud-based platforms decided to stop the services because the consumption was very less. And this was typically more so in the case of travel portals and travel companies. Obviously, there was no travel happening. The revenue was almost zero, right? So in fact, even a few media houses for that matter. And the reasoning was that there is very little ad revenue being generated, although there is a lot of traffic from the users, but there is very little ad revenue being generated, right? So they had the flexibility because of the cloud solution. They had the flexibility to stop that billing or ask for a scaling down of the consumption. That would not have been possible had that been a sunk cost for them, had that been a capex investment already that has gone on for them. So I think this is definitely one of the areas, one of the options that most customers will be looking at, and that thought process would have started in many customers because of the pandemic today, right? Then there are customers who expect us to give them a pre-packaged solution. So what we have today is a suite of offerings, and in that per technology area, we have anywhere between 1 to 3 OEMs that we support, and OEMs on whose technology we've built up a platform, multi-tenant platform that we offer to clients. So in some customer cases, the expectation is to give a complete pre-packaged MDRS solution. So it's up to us to kind of make sure that we put in the right tools which already exist with us and then package it out for them. And in certain other cases where they may have existing legacy investments, the expectation is to take a la carte solutions from us, maybe only the SIEM as a service from us, and then integrate it with the rest of the security solutions that they have. And so, towards the latter part of your question, in terms of how do I see this going forward in the next, changing, I think there will definitely be a much more shift and customer readiness or acceptance towards multi-tenant and cloud-based solutions, where they will be putting more and more onus on the service provider to, be able to be responsible for the services that they provide, and kind of take ownership of the tools that they bring onto the table.
Okay, so let me just quickly take a live question, and address it to you, and probably anyone in the panel can also substantiate it. So Milind Mongale from NSDL e-governance infrastructure, he's saying that have we reached a level that remote work or work from home is reached a maturity level in the last 3 months, or there's still missing things and few more things may be required for a policy of permanent work from home? I mean, is that the industry sentiment, that it has reached to a level of maturity and therefore, the companies have to align from a security perspective, the companies have to align their security strategy to it? Rishi, could you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. I thought probably one of the panelists would want to take that, right? So, but I think in my experience, I don't think we've reached that level of maturity. Honestly, even now, work from home is more like a get out of jail free card, right? We've been pushed into this situation. We've not, and yes, while being pushed into the situation, everybody has done a really great job at doing it, right? But is it a cultural shift yet? I don't think so, because and to substantiate my thing, just probably take a look outside, right? I mean, today when the lockdown restrictions have been relaxed, you suddenly have people going out, right? So there will be, and this is my opinion, I could be wrong on this one, or I could be proven wrong at a later stage on this one, but I think culturally we've not made much of a shift here. Right now we've been forced to kind of do the work from home. When the cultural shift happens, that is when the level of the correct level of maturity will come in, and that is where you will start doing not just run the organization activities from home, but even creative activities and build the organization activities from home. Today, that I don't see that happening. Again, I may not have had exposure to that, but whatever limited exposure I've had, I don't see that happening, because creative activities take much more, they need more face-to-face human interaction, right? Because I can then immediately see what your reaction is, react to it, jump in and things like that, which is not currently as seamlessly possible when you are doing it, trying to do it over a Zoom or any other video conference setup, right? When we reach that level of maturity, that is when the employees are aware of what kind of care they need to take while working from home from a security perspective. They will have the proper policies documented and sent out to them from the organization in terms of, let's say, cloud usage. What is acceptable to share on the cloud, what is not acceptable to share on the cloud, right? Today, it's probably just about anybody's guess, and it's like the wild, wild west out there. So I think culturally, when an organization reaches that level of maturity that, okay, a large proportion of our workforce is going to work from home, that is when things will start flowing top down, and they will start happening in a much more secure manner.
Okay, so we have one more question from, a lot of our Japanese guests are also taking part in this real-time web conference. So there's a question that we have captive setup and hosting business critical data. How can cloud-based security offerings ensure secured exposure of our environment?
Yeah, so see, again, the whole paradigm today needs to be thought about differently, because if you think that you have a captive setup and hence you've built a moat around it, that may not necessarily hold true. Of course, you will need to evaluate it from your own business perspective and an existing network and security architecture. But in a more generalistic sense of it, that has become less and less relevant. Okay. So that is when you need to have a cloud-based solution, so that you keep whatever comes back to you, back within the corporate network, whether it is access to a database, whether it is access to an application, or whether it is access to your endpoint, right, or access from an endpoint. Whatever comes at the end of it comes as a clean manner, right, or at least in a semi-clean manner, where most of the risks or threats associated have been already taken care of at the source itself. So, for example, let's say you have a captive setup as a JMNC company, but you still give out a certain amount of laptops to at least your senior leadership team, right? Maybe you don't give it to everybody, but you definitely give it to a certain percentage of the this thing, COVID or no COVID, you still have that in place, right? So now, when they are accessing it from their home, or from Wi-Fi at the airport, or any other location, and if they are subject to spear phishing attack, right? Then you unless you have a cloud-based solution in place, it's going to be a bit difficult to dodge that bullet, because then you're relying upon the fact that that person has already connected back over VPN to your network, and they're going through, backhauling to your environment and going through it, and then they are secure, right? So that may not necessarily be true. So that's where a cloud-based solution then helps even when you have a captive setup in place.
Okay, so before I ask you one last question, may I ask my colleague to flash the third and the final poll question, which will give us the decision on who are these. Okay, here you go. So what will form part of your rethinking strategy going forward? You can have multiple choices in this. So what will form part of your rethinking strategy going forward? If you can quickly fill up this poll, that will give us those 6 lucky winners of the security assessment by CloudSec, and also Rishi has promised to me that the panelists will get it complimentary as well. Okay, so have we not 15 seconds yet, I guess. There we go. So the poll disappeared, and here are the results. So adopt a 360-degree approach based on internal and external environment monitoring is where most of the people are voting. 73% of the people who have voted. Engage with a managed security service provider to outsource security controls in part or whole is 42% are in favor of that. adopt cloud-based security solutions to enforce security closer to the source of threat. 35% say for that, and consolidate security controls in-house and build a captive security capability, a minuscule 15%. So people are in favor of managed security service providers. So, so great. One last question quickly, which one of our attendees has asked, is that in the current scenario, the question is from Shantanu Bhattacharya, how you protected the data from the employees. In the office, you create ODC and don't allow even camera phones along with any other device. So in work from home environment, how do you protect this data? It's a very basic but a very pertinent question.
So should we have any of the panelists, or you want me to answer that?
You can carry on, please, Rishi.
Yeah, okay. So that is exactly the get out of jail free card that I mentioned earlier, right? The short and sweet answer to that is it is actually not in place, because what you do in an ODC is exactly what you mentioned. Take the don't allow camera phones, and don't allow notes, and have video, the CCTVs record everything, and you have nothing of that today, right? So it's, if you have a BPO employee and if they are working from home, and if they are looking at customer data, well, there's nothing that stops them from taking a notepad and jotting it down, right? And of course that wouldn't lead to a massive data scale breach, but that's a start, right? So I think at this point in time there is no clear answer. I think what will depend is what level of data is being accessed by the employees from home, right? There are solutions in place, and in fact this is a solution that we are coming up with in the next quarter. So this is a database activity monitoring solution, and I'm not suggesting that DAM is the only solution related to data related protection. Obviously there are multiple other things like monitoring the shadow IT, monitoring the cloud usage. All of those things need to be there, right? So if one is you try to prevent and protect, solutions like the database activity monitoring, or masking solutions and things like that, or like in the stricter sense of it, put them into an ODC and not let them carry out anything, and or have any means to capture the data, right? So that's one way of doing it, preventing it. But where prevention does not work, you then need to look at the proactive monitoring, right? So that's where you should be looking at monitoring the external environment, the darknet or the deep web, to find out if there is any activity that is being talked about relevant to your organization, relevant to the data that your organization holds, right? And then try and take actions around those. In fact, it was very heartening to see maximum number of responses coming on the point number 3 on the poll, right? Because that is precisely what they talked about, monitoring the external environment in addition to what you're doing at the internal environment, right? And these are solutions. Just to quickly jump back to the earlier JMNC question, these are solutions that can be done only through cloud. I mean, you can't have an on-premise solution for this. This has to be, the darknet and deep web exist outside of your organization. So that is a cloud-based solution. And I hope that answered in some manner.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, Rishi. Yeah,
yes.
sorry. Yeah, in Navneet here. In addition to that, the very valid point you brought in. Most of the client also, they have changed their mindset, because it's a two-way, right? If you take the BPO, most of the organization now, they started to do the masking in terms of your credit card, debit card, and all the things and all. Then now the most of things it's happening on the tokenization. Instead of the entire 16 digit, it comes as XYZ. That's also now started to implement. And then in terms of the ODC concept, right, where people do the development of the entire organization, they have a set of people, like more than 100 people sitting in one place is doing the development. They want to have a close discussion. Maybe other floor, they may have a competitor, right? So now the client also accepting, like it's not like within an organization where other employees coming into the picture and then taking their data and all the stuff, right? It's most of the things it's working from home. It's absolutely, you are more secure than when you are in office. So that mindset also came into the picture. Only thing is, where we can't take out the data physically as VDI and then other DLP and then other, the controls where we started to enforce from end to end. Thanks, Ajay.
Thank you, Navneetan, for the addendum to the answer. I think we have reached the threshold of time. So, just to summarize, within organizations, the cybersecurity leaders actually need to take a very stronger and more strategic, positioning in such times, because they need to move beyond being just compliance monitors and enforcers to better integrate with the business, manage information risks more strategically, and kind of work together, work towards a culture of shared cyber risk ownership across the enterprise. Of course, there's no silver bullet to ensure that the cybersecurity is a fundamental component of the entire business operating model and the culture. They have to answer certain very tough questions that will be asked by the CEO or the board. But I'm sure as the CIO and as the CISO, they are very well geared up and they are prepared. The challenge is very daunting. However, they are quite prepared as far as my information knowledge is concerned. So thank you very much for your kind inputs, all the panelists. I think Preeti had to rush for a meeting, but Amitabh, Navneetan, Madhu, and Rishi, thank you so much for your contribution to the discussion. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope you also enjoyed the discussion. And also my heartfelt thanks to all the attendees from India and from the Japanese agencies here. I hope this was a valuable, informative, meaningful discussion, and we took away some really tangible, takeaways from this discussion. So thank you very much. As I said, the 6 winners, we will be sending a small thank you note to all the attendees here, and we'll also be declaring those 6 winners and we'll be informing them on one-on-one in a mail tomorrow. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.